We are getting breaking news from Kabul. A large explosion has taken place outside the airport in the Afghan capital of Kabul. These are the reports that are coming in from Afghanistan. Casualties are feared in this huge explosion that was heard outside the airport in Kabul. Remember, just a couple of days back, gunmen had entered the Park Palace guest house in Kabul and had killed several people, including 4 Indians. The attack was largely on foreigners. In that case, in fact, India had initially feared that the attack was targeted at Indians specifically. However, later on it emerged that there were other people inside the guest house as well, although it is well known that that guest house was thronged by Indians. And now there are reports coming in from Afghanistan of a massive explosion outside the Kabul airport. Now, the initial reports suggest that there could be casualties. This massive explosion took place outside the Kabul airport and the explosion was heard far away as well, and initial reports are suggesting that there could be casualties. In the attack that took place just a few days ago, Taliban had claimed responsibility, although the Afghan government said that they will investigate the matter further to figure out whether it was indeed Taliban or not. Remember, the Taliban has upped their attack over the last 1 month after they announced their spring offensive. Gaurav Sawant is now joining us with more details. Gaurav, what information is coming in from Afghanistan about this explosion that's taken place outside the Kabul airport?
Very sketchy details and conflicting reports are coming in of this terror attack. One thing is known so far. Afghan security forces say this was a suicide attack. There was a powerful explosion. Foreigners were the target. This is what preliminary information seems to indicate. The second part, of which there are 2 conflicting reports, is after the suicide attack, there's also an AK-47 burst fire that's being reported from 2 different parts of the road that's leading to the airport. Once again, an attempt is to target a convoy which was to pass from this area and which basically comprised foreigners. So, as you rightly pointed out, this appears to be a case of the spring offensive, and with the aim to specifically target foreigners, perhaps quite in line with what happened at the Park Palace guest house just earlier last week.
And Gaurav, as you're pointing out here, this attack again seems to be targeted specifically at foreigners.
This is what Afghan security forces have told the local news reporters at this point of time, because the vehicle that was targeted in the crowded marketplace was that of foreigners. So far, no complete details about the number of casualties, because reports indicate that the operation is still underway, especially with burst fire being heard in 2 different parts. If these are terrorists who are, they not only starts with the suicide attack and then goes on to more terrorists launching an attack using AK-47 assault rifles, then this appears to be a very well-planned mission and not the work of some lone wolf. Also, in this region, now there are conflicting reports of multiple terrorist organizations now targeting Kabul as part of Taliban's spring offensive, Maha.
All right, Gaurav, do stay on with us. Let me quickly tell our viewers that image that they can see on their television screens is the first image that has appeared after this massive explosion took place outside the Kabul airport. Now, Reuters is reporting that a car bomb exploded on a road near the main airport in Kabul, and apparently, now this at the moment is just speculation that it perhaps was targeting NATO troops. This is the latest attack in the city. There is no immediate word on casualties, and international force said that it could not confirm if any of its vehicles had been hit. In fact, the police in Afghanistan, in Kabul, says that the suicide bomber, as Gaurav was pointing out there, came in a Toyota Corolla and rammed a convoy of the foreign troops on the road from Kabul's main airport to a NATO military installation nearby. A spokesperson for NATO's Resolute Support Mission said that there was no early confirmation that a coalition vehicle had been hit and referred the queries to the Afghan Ministry of Interior. Let me go back to our strategic affairs editor Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, in the last attack, we saw that the gunman had already sneaked into the Park Palace guest house. In this case, again, you are saying that after the the explosion, there are initial reports that suggest that there could be a gunman as well?
This is what preliminary information seems to indicate. Afghan national security forces seem to say to indicate that this was a very well-planned offensive and not the work of a lone wolf. They were targeting terrorists were targeting a convoy of foreigners. In fact, they did not even elaborate whether it was NATO forces or a convoy of foreigners. But the sources I spoke to did indicate that this was a convoy that was targeted, which was passing through a busy marketplace. And that is when a vehicle targeted one convoy. There were casualties. There are casualties, but the number of casualties is still not ascertained, for the simple reason that after that, burst fire was heard in two different parts of the same marketplace. Whether these were security forces retaliating or terrorists launching another strike after the suicide attack, that remains to be seen. And this is exactly why security forces fear that this could be a very well-planned, meticulously planned operation after careful recce of convoy movement. Of course, convoy movements are also now no longer at fixed times. They travel at different times. They keep travel zones also secret, paths also secret. But in a way, when you're passing through a marketplace, you are fair target. Convoy protection, systems are in place, but a suicide attacker appears to have breached the convoy protection route and targeted at least one vehicle.
Also, Gaurav, is there any word on the casualties that are feared?
None. Casualties are feared. That is what reports from Kabul say. Number of casualties, number of fatalities and non-fatalities. No clarity on that just as yet. It's only when this fog lifts after the operation will the situation be clear. But what we do know is that emergency services are already in place, except that it's only after this firing stops. Of course, the initial reports seem to indicate that there will be a couple of bursts that were heard, whether retaliatory fire or more terrorists launching an offensive at foreigners after the initial suicide attacker. That is still not known. The situation should be clearer in perhaps the next half hour.
And Gaurav, too early to find out who and has anybody claimed responsibility as well for this attack?
Not just as yet, but if you recall, even in the previous attack, it took a day for the Taliban in Afghanistan to claim responsibility for the hotel attack, where indications were that in that particular attack, Indians were the main target, and perhaps it could well have been India's ambassador to Afghanistan in the previous terror attack. In this terror attack, all Afghan security forces, as of now, all they're saying is the foreigners were the target. An unknown number of foreigners perhaps have been killed and injured in this terror attack, but figures of casualties still not there, Maha.
Gaurav, help us understand the spring offensive that has been announced by Taliban, the timing of it all.
At this point of time, as US forces and NATO forces wind down in Afghanistan, the Afghan reconciliation process, now this is moving in two different parallels. One, there is a reconciliation effort that is on, which Pakistan is pushing for it. If you recall, just before this spate of offensive, Pakistan's Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, the chief of Pakistan's army, Dil Rahil Sharif, they were in Afghanistan, and while they have claimed that Afghanistan's enemies are their enemies and Pakistan's enemies cannot be Afghanistan's friends. So while this is their claim, there are enough indications to show that Pakistan is being economical with the truth when it claims it is no longer helping terrorist forces. From all that intelligence agencies seem to indicate, Pakistan's offensive also in the northwest frontier province in the Afghan-Pakistan belt is restricted to only anti-Pakistan terrorist groups. They haven't targeted the Afghani network at all. So, and which is operational in this area. So it remains to be seen. So far no one's claimed responsibility for this terror attack, Maha.
All right, nobody's claimed responsibility for this terror attack that has taken place outside the Kabul airport. Casualties feared. However, the security forces there are not putting any number to it at the moment. Gaurav Sawant reporting on that explosion that's taken place in Afghanistan.